Ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention for a little bit. As most of you all know by now, this year is our 50th anniversary here at Phoenix International Raceway, and very special year for us, and this is a very special moment for us. We're honored to be joined by Bobby Allison, one of the 50 greatest drivers in NASCAR history. Bobby was kind enough to come spend the weekend with us here and help us kick off our 50th anniversary. Throughout the weekend, has done several appearances with fans throughout the property, and we asked him to come up here and just spend a little bit of time with you guys. So, Mr. Allison, first of all, thank you for being here. If we could, let's just start off talking about you raced in the Winston West Series when NASCAR made its debut here in 1977 and in the late 70s and early 80s. Can you just talk about what those first races out here at Phoenix were like for you guys?
Well, I was enthusiastic about going and running anywhere, and to get to come to Phoenix and race, a track that the Indy cars had run on, but it was a small grandstand and the pretty low bank racetrack and all that. But I like those kind of tracks, so I wanted to come. Came out here and raced, and met a lot of people, became friends with a lot of people. Became personal friends with Denny Wood, which that's special to me even to today. And then when Buddy Job took over the track, became friends with Buddy Job, and I feel good about that. But I got to say, I was here racing and doing pretty good, and we had to have a red flag in the race because that sand and sweet was not there, and the sun was going down, and it was so much straight in your face that you could not see. So we had about a 30-minute red flag in the one particular race I'm talking about, and got back going, and then I won the race. So, I remember that part good. Won here in the Copper World also, but made friends out here and enjoyed the area, and I have always liked the racetrack. So it's special to me.
In those first few years, from the first race in '77 up through when you won in '82, just talk a little bit about how you saw the crowds grow and the impact that yourself and your contemporaries Richard Petty and Cale Yarborough and the like had on bringing those crowds out and helping the sport take root here in the Southwest.
Well, and I did feel really good about that. I was conscious of the crowds from early on. See, back in my really early days, I bought the promoting rights to Birmingham, Alabama, BIR Raceway. And I really learned what it meant to have people in the stands against not having, and not having full stands. And so it meant something to me to be able to encourage people to come to the races. And, I made a lot of friends doing that, and I had success along the way, and feel like really contributed to this. And Richard Petty was the toughest competitor at the time, Richard Petty was the top guy for all those years, but Richard really helped bring the people to, so it was great working with him, whatever they were doing. I raced him hard, and he resented it a little bit now and then when I was ahead of him when the checker flag came down. I was the little guy, and he was the guy on his way to being the king, and I really didn't appreciate me interfering with his success at the time, but I thought it was great, so I did it.
We'll open up any questions you guys have. I'll start with Stan.
Hey, Bobby, Stan Creekmore with RPM.com. When you came out here and saw this track the very first time and made the first few laps, where did your mind take you as far as any other track you'd been at that helped you understand what you needed to do here to get to the checkered flag?
Well, the track was kind of different, but it resembled BIR, my favorite home racetrack, a place where I had won over and over, and then took over the promoting chores there for a year, which I got out of there in a hurry. I found out I was not a race promoter, but at any rate, that was a low bank, 5/8 of a mile paved racetrack that was very much like the east end of this track. The turn is different there, and not as banked as the west turn, the 1 and 2, and I really keyed into that. And of course, the the egg shape of the racetrack is kind of like Darlington. You know, Darlington was the first big super speedway, and they were building that track, and somebody owned a little piece of land and wouldn't sell it to them, and so they had to shorten up that side of the track. And so one corner at Darlington was really tight, and the other was a real nice big sweeping corner. So it was a little bit like that too.
Any other questions? John, back here.
Bobby, when you raced out here, the Winston West series that you raced with, that was much closer in competition in terms of the cars than we see with the K&N West. Tell us a little bit about how competitive those guys, because they had people like Ray Elder and Herschel McGriff who were top competitors.
Yeah, they really did. See, and Ray Elder won a Grand National race at Riverside. Herschel McGriff ran really good several times, and Herschel went back east and raced and did good on some occasions. It was really good racing, and I only got to win once or twice. I think I won 2 of the West races, but I won 3 or 4 other ones around the country because I really did that. I traveled and did all the races I could every year, and I was lucky and fortunate enough to be able to win in a lot of different places, and I haven't really kept the right records, or at least not at my fingertips, but got some wins, but really respected these guys because they race and they race hard.
Okay. Back in the back, Marty.
This on, okay. Marty Smith, ESPN, good morning. What is your opinion of having one race and 4 drivers to determine who the champion of NASCAR is?
Wow. You know, there probably a time or two in my career that I would have won the championship doing that. You know, when they went to the first phase of the modern format, I didn't like it because I had won my championship under the old rules. But the very first year, I would have won the championship with one of my years. I had a year, 1971. I won 9 of the last 19 races of the season that year, and that certainly would have won the championship. I didn't win because I hadn't done well enough in the other races to build the points. And at that time, the points weren't that valuable, and I was getting started, and I couldn't keep a job. You know, I'd win a race and make the car owner mad, and he'd fire me, and I'd have to go somewhere else and get another job. And so I was up and down, but I finally got with Ralph Moody at Holman and Moody and dominated at 71 at the end of the season. And maybe even 72, you know, I drove for Junior, and we won a lot of races and lost the championship. But under the new configuration, maybe I could have got that. So I swayed over to, and the fact that it did put that extra interest into the races at the end of the year kind of changed my opinion. Swayed over to that thinking. But this newest thing is yet another really different way to look at this whole thing, and it's liable to be good. I'm waiting to see. It's liable to be good.
Additional questions down here?
Mr. Allison, Jerry Fraley from the Dallas Morning News. This is a little bit off topic, but you raced under a lot of different numbers in your career. As you said, you changed jobs a lot. Did any particular number mean anything to you? And also, how do you feel about the NASCAR the numbers aren't retired?
Well, I felt good about numbers. You know, my first 12 was my favorite number always. That just happened. My favorite number in the old modifieds was 312. You know, you could have a 3-digit number in those days, and I just thought that was really neat. I had worked for a team that had a 12 and a 112, and didn't really want 212, so I took 312. But then as time went on, I realized that's my birthday, the 3rd of December. So 312. And then NASCAR said, well, you can't have a 3-digit number. And so my first favorite number in that was 2. 2 was available, and I won my first races with number 2. But then as time went on, I got 12 on my own car and won a race or two. But then got to change jobs again, and so I won in 2 and 6 and 11 and 12 and 14 and 15 and 16 and 22 and 28 and 49 and 88. And you know, I had the incredible pleasure of being able to win a race and get fired. And I also had a time or two where I won the race and quit. So, you know, between my own personality defects and some of these others along the way, I had a pretty different experience through my whole career.
Barry, back here on the camera platform. Either one will work.
Jerry, loveracing.com. So when you started, did you drive mostly dirt or were you pavement, and which one did you like the most?
No, I drove mostly asphalt. The track in Miami that I ran my first race, I drove my school car out to Hialeah Speedway, a 3rd mile flat paved, and run that race. It was an amateur race. I had to have my parents' permission to run the race because I was only 17. And about 30 cars showed up for this first event, and I ran 7th. And I thought, well, that's not too bad because there's a lot of guys behind me. Second week, about 40 cars showed up. I ran 7th again. That was a better ratio because the same guys were in front of me, but there were more behind me. And the third week, there about 50 cars showed up for this thing, and I won. And it was like winning Daytona or Indianapolis. So that got me started. Now, and I was key to the pavement. Now, the dirt in South Florida wasn't good for racing on. You know, there was no consistency to it like the red clay of the Carolinas, Georgia and the Carolinas. And so I didn't really pay attention to that. I went off racing on pavement, and I had incredible success on short track from early on. I won my first feature event the second week I was in Alabama and ran pavement in Alabama, not dirt. And I struggled on dirt. You know, I could go somewhere around here and go to a racetrack and get in a strange car on a paved track and feel good. But dirt kept me at bay. But they still had some dirt races in the Grand National at the time. And I won at Savannah one night, and the King Richard Petty was second to me, and I thought that was just really okay. And after that, then I won a few races on the short dirt tracks, you know, the modifieds and sportsmen on dirt. Not many, but, you know, I could go somewhere on pavement and feel good and had a good chance of getting the win. And on dirt, I struggled. The very last dirt race I ever ran, I struggled as bad as I did the first one. So I didn't do the dirt. I was really happy when our Grand National, you know, the pre-cup race went to all pavement.
We're done here, Stan.
Okay, so what does it mean to you that when this track looked at its past 50 years, there were thousands of drivers and people for them to pick through that represent the history of this facility? What does it mean to be one of 50 people that means so much to this facility, to this track?
Well, it's such an incredible compliment to me to be asked to do this and to look back at the old days and represent the thing. It was a great life for me. You know, I had a tremendous career, a long career. Wasn't going to be over, and then I had that little mishap at Pocono. You know, it stopped everything. Was able to associate myself and guide the best young man coming along, and got a tremendous thrill out of that. And his younger brother was another great pleasure to me. Clifford, you know, we lost Clifford in the race car at Michigan, and then we lost Davey in the helicopter at Alabama. You know, good things, bad things. if a good friend of mine says this about Davy, you know, we really, really enjoyed Davy. God let us have him for a little while.
All right.
And that's just the greatest thing for me. And Clifford fits right in there too with Davy on that with me and Judy, you know. So had a great career, and it is a great industry, and it's so family oriented, you know. From early on, I would take the plane and fly from race to race, and Judy would take some motor coach that, or you know, motor home that she'd beg, borrow, or steal from somebody, and load up the 4 kids and the dog and her mother and stepdad and maybe 1 or 2 of my brothers or sisters. Now, my brothers didn't ride in that, but my sisters did, and go up and down the road and meet me at the racetrack, and it was really a great family activity.
Any additional questions? Okay. Mr. Allison, thank you very much for joining us, and again, thank you for being here this weekend to celebrate our 50th anniversary with
You
us.
bet, and thanks for having me. This is great.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention once again, please. As I mentioned earlier, this is our 50th anniversary here at PIR, and we've been joined by several of the legendary drivers who have raced here in years past, and it's a great honor, especially as I told you the other day, as a kid who grew up in Texas, to be joined by a fellow Texan and a man who many consider the greatest race car driver of all time, A.J. Foyt.
It's great to be back here in Phoenix. You know, this is really where I got my start. With the late Clint Bronner and Jimmy Bryan. There's one that gave me my first contract to go to Indy, so I really feel like I'm back at home. I mean, it's been many years ago, but Phoenix has always been good to me. And like I said, my first major contract with Dean Van Lines and Clint Bronner was right from here. So Phoenix has really helped AJ get where he come from.
Now, Mr. Foyt, you won the first professional race ever held here on March 22nd, 1964. Can you just talk a little bit about your memories of that race, what you guys thought opening up a brand new racetrack, and just kind of how the race unfolded?
Well, actually, you know, the race was wonderful. You know, I had a little Aero Commander airplane. I kind of landed on the back strip here. Back then, I don't remember, it's kind of the road course they had here, and just so many improvements has been made here since then. It's just hard to believe, you know. First of all, who'd ever think I'd still be over here? And no, it's just amazing to see the growth of Phoenix, even where I stay out at the Wigwam, because when I used to come back here and test with Goodyear, you know, it's really nothing out there but I guess alfalfa fields or patches or whatever. Even out here, you didn't see the houses. So it's amazing, just unbelievable, to be truthful with you. And I think one of the best things they did to the racetrack was the tunnel, because, you know, we used to have to park up in the hill up there and then cross, and if somebody got hurt, you know, they had to stop the race to take them across. And I went through there a couple of times like that, getting hurt out here. But it's just amazing how far Phoenix has come and what a beautiful facility it is. And like I said, Phoenix is where I got my first big contract to go to Indianapolis, which I kind of owe Phoenix something. So enjoyable to come back here.
And you kind of alluded to it, but just how have you seen kind of the track evolve as technology has improved, as tires have improved, and as the track has been tweaked a little bit over time?
Well, everything's been improved. You know, it's been repaved, and, you know, the pit walls and all that. It's so much more safety, because when we first come here, if you remember, well, you don't probably remember, you're not old enough, but it was Armco, you know, and I'll never forget when Bobby Unser on the dog leg went through the fence and it went over the roll bar, and who would ever think he was living? He didn't even get a scratch. And like I say, it's just hard to believe, you know, and like I say, the way it was 50 years ago, I mean, the improvements they made, you know, it's just unbelievable.
Open up the questions. Michael Knight back in the back will lead off.
Hi, AJ. Michael Knight. How are you?
Nice seeing you again.
Hey, this was before when you were driving, but this track and a lot of others have lights, and Saturday night racing has become popular in a lot of places. A cup race here used to be run under the lights. Do you like, first of all, do you like night racing?
I've always liked night racing. Most of my racing through the years was at night, you know, a lot of the sprint cars and midgets and all that. So, no, I've always liked night racing. I think it's going to be the next big thing, stock cars and Indy cars and all that night racing, because, you know, if you got a 100-degree day, you got to be pretty damn tough to sit up in that grandstand because it gets hot. I didn't realize how hot it was when I was racing because, you know, I was in the car and the air was blowing on, but since I've retired and sitting in the pits, people don't realize how hot that pits gets, and so you can imagine sitting up in the grandstand how hot it gets. So I think that's going to be the coming thing, to be truthful with you.
AJ, when you used to run here on Saturdays and then go to Manzanita on Saturday night, did you do that because you love driving at Manzi or to win the $500 to win there?
No, I've always liked Manzanita Park. Was a great little dirt racetrack, and here, you know, if you like to race, you like to race. You know, I know a lot of people jumped on my good friend Tony Stewart for running sprint cars. Like I said, life's very short. If you can't do what you want to do in life, and like I said, in 1961, driving for Bo Sealfast, it was like 3 days before the race, and I went and raced Raceway Park with a sprint car, and then in '74, I was sitting on a pole then and went to the fairground. They ain't drove sprint cars in 4 or 5 years, you know. So if you like to race, you're going to race regardless if it's for $1 or $1 million. And I think that's what I always liked to do. I didn't care about how much the purse was, because I can remember, I think 2 or 3 days after Indy one year, after we finished there, I went to Terre Haute, which is a little bull ring. But, you know, if you want to race, you got to race.
AJ, last thing. We used to have a dog leg at Trenton, but it went right. The dog leg here has always been one of the most famous characteristics of this track. Did you like that layout?
Well, one thing about this track, and actually Trenton, this track's a lot harder to get handling on than Trenton, New Jersey was, because this track here, if you came here, and what I liked about it, if you tested here on the Indy car and you got it feeling halfway comfortable, you could go to Indianapolis and run very fast. This is the only racetrack, I think, that I've ever been to that you could test the Indy car on. If you got it feeling comfortable, you go to Indianapolis and run pretty fast, because 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 are completely different turns, and you know, you got to get through 1 and 2 pretty hard, and then 3 and 4, when you get set up good, you can pretty much run flat-footed all the way through there. And the dog leg just keeps the boreness out. It kind of keeps you awake when you come off a 2 back there. But no, I think it's very interesting for the drivers, and also very interesting for the fans.
Thank you. We'll go Stan, and then Marty, and then back down to Tom.
Hi, AJ, back here in the corner as well. With Stan Creekmore with RPMtonight.com. When you first came here, that very first race, what in your mind did you think about the track, and how did you put together everything you needed to get that win? That's question number 1 for you.
Well, actually, you know, in '64, believe it or not, I think I won every race but 1 or 2. So we had a hell of a year going, and Big Noddy, you know, was a crew chief, and we worked awful good together. And I don't know, we just come here and just run some tests, and everything just fell in line, you know. And, you know, one other track that people forget about, and I won my first championship here with USAC, was the mile dirt track. And the championship between the late, great Roger Ward, and I had to win that race to win the championship, and lucky enough, I won the race, and I had almost a lap lead, and Big Noddy come out shaking a wheel hammer and at me, because I guess I wasn't slowing down like he wanted me to. Like, hi, damn it, you're going to break, and we're running for the championship, and you're leading race. What the hell are you trying to prove? But no, I've had a lot of good times here, and like I said, Phoenix has been very good to me.
Well, you've almost answered my second question. Phoenix looks at its 50 years of existence, there are thousands of drivers who have been here. You're number one in Phoenix's mind. What does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, I never thought I'd be around that long. I don't know. You know, it's kind of, the whole world's changed from 50 years ago. I mean, you'd see the government the way it is, and racing is completely, I wouldn't say 100% different. It's still racing, but it's probably 75 or 80% because, you know, you take the stock cars, so much data there is different than it was back then. You take the Indy cars, you can't even fire the damn things up without a computer. But all in all, it's better for the racing. It's better for the people. It's more safer for the drivers, and that's the biggest thing, is safety. If you look back when I qualified at Indy, there probably ain't but 3 or 4 of us still living, and it wasn't because they died of old age.
Go Marty, back behind the column down there.
Good morning, sir. Marty Smith, ESPN. You know Tony Stewart better than any of us do. What do you think the impact of the broken leg is on him? What have you seen, how that's affected him?
Oh, I don't think it's going to affect him because Tony's a racer, and I mean, he might limp or be crippled, but hell, look at me. But it never affected me when I got burned or nothing, so I don't think it's going to affect Tony. Once you're a racer and you're a hard racer, I mean, Tony ain't going to settle for second or third, you know, and Tony will run just as hard for $1 as he will for $1 million. And I think that's where me and him become friends, you know. And, you know, a lot of people badmouth him for running a sprint car race and for everything he had going for him. But, you know, like I said, life's short. If you can't do what you want to do in life, what the hell's the use of living? So I respect him for racing. I mean, because just because it was a little bull ring racetrack he got hurt on, a lot of people done that before, and so you got to respect Tony for what he's doing.
We'll come down in the front row, Tom.
Hi, AJ. Tom Jensen, FoxSports.com. Speaking of Tony, when you guys sitting around having a couple beers, do you argue about who's the better racer, who had the better career, and what's the outcome of that?
Well, really, you know, the last time we probably did that was at Annapolis doing some stuff, and they had the trophy. I said, Tony, I don't see your damn picture up there. So we've had a lot of fun, and like the Daytona 500 on the job here. And I said, Tony, you know, I was fortunate enough to win this race. What are you going to do? No, but we're great friends. It's just a matter of time before he wins all these races.
Okay. Dustin, right in the middle row.
Dustin Long, MRN.com. You know, a lot of people refer to Tony as the A.J. Foyt of this generation, being the A.J. Foyt. When you hear people refer to that, is that something you take with pride, or is that something with every race driver's got a little ego and say, hey, I'm a little better than him?
No, I tell you what, in my day, I was a pretty good race driver. In this day, Tony Stewart's a damn good race driver. So, you know, and that's what I've always said in racing. You know, that a lot of people said you're one of the best that ever was. But what would say back in the early days, I was good as Ted Harn or Wilbur Shaw or something like that. So in my time, I was a pretty good race driver. And I think that passes because I'm just glad to be included amongst some of them greats way back there because there ain't no sign says A.J. Foyt would beat anybody or like Tony Stewart. It's just great to be in your time to be up there in front because I take my hat off to some of the guys. I've seen some of the cars they drove, and there's no way I'd drive them down the freeway straight as fast as some of them drove them. So I don't know. I'm just glad to be named amongst them because I don't feel I've ever been any better than anybody else that's ever sat in a race car. But like I said, in my time, I was pretty good.
Go Jim, and then up here, Jeff.
Jim Peltz, the LA Times. AJ, how are you feeling? I mean, now that you've had those surgeries and whatnot are behind you, I mean, will you go to Indy in May feeling better than you have in a number of years?
Well, I think so. You know, last year I just got out of a hospital with a back injury, you know, operated on, and then about 4 months ago, I guess it come from all this racing, I don't know, or driving my bulldozer. I had to have a hip put in. I got where I couldn't walk. And then I was going to go all this year without my right leg. Both of my legs, you know, they're going to amputate my left leg at Watkins Glen, you know, when Elkhart leg, where I got hurt so bad. And I said, well, just send me back to Texas. I'm damn sure I didn't want it up in Wisconsin in a garbage can. I said, and so the doctor said, would I sign release? Nobody's there, and I was still conscious. to reestablish blood flow. I said, yeah, but no amputation. Just remember that. Just put me on a plane and get me home. But then they had to put the left knee in, about 5 or 6 years ago. And if you probably recall, a couple of years ago, I got that damn staph infection from the hospital, and that was probably worse than any broken bones or anything. And I was about like 4.5 months where they had to put the PICC line into me in my heart. And of course, I lost 41 pounds, but I gained it back because they used to couple people call my wife and said, AJ loves ice cream, which I do. And she said, I know he's sick because he won't eat it. But the other day, middle of December, my right leg got where I just couldn't stand it no more, and it's been operated on 2 or 3 times. They put a knee in me December the 12th, so I'm feeling so much better every day. I'm kind of a little nervous when I first get up and take steps. That's the reason you see me trying to keep weight on it, because I'm just not too damn sure what the hell is going to do, all this fake stuff. But, it's better than what it was, and I'm getting out of a lot of pain, so that's the biggest thing.
Okay, we got time for about 3 more. We'll go Jeff, Jerry, and then end up with Mark in the back.
Jeff Gluck from USA Today. AJ, are drivers too friendly with each other these days? Why don't they fight anymore like they used to?
That's the changes in this world. No, I can't answer that question because I never was a fighter. I was kind of a baby and a coward myself. But, it just don't happen like it used to. And I think with the corporations like that, they don't like to see things like that. I think the fans do, but a lot of the corporation, you big people, I don't know if I'd have made it in this time or not. But I think that's one of the big things. Oh, they still get aggravated every now and then, but nothing like it used to be. I remember when I used to run at home on Saturday nights, the people would run at the end of the grandstand to see what happened in the pits, somebody, big fights. But, them days are gone now, it looks like. It's more politics now.
Okay. Jerry?
Mr. Foyt, Jerry Fraley from the Dallas Morning News. First of all, happy Texas Independence Day. What made 14 an important number for you, and did you have to give your blessing for Tony could run under that number?
No, I was just glad he wanted to run it because I didn't think nobody ever wanted to run it. But I'll tell you what, one year I'd win the championship. Next year I might be 3 or 4 or 5. And I remember the great late Vukovich, Bill Vukovich, had that number. Of course, he got killed with that number. But all joking aside, I said, well, hell, every year I got a different number. I just want to reestablish myself with a number and live with it till I quit. And I was awful glad Tony wanted that number. Numbers, they want to retire them, but I don't think he should retire them myself because I think if somebody great wants to run a number, it's a big honor in your behalf for them to run the number.
Okay. And Michael?
AJ, with the current generation of IndyCar and with the modifications that were made to this track 2 years ago, number one, do you think IndyCars would put on a good show here? And number two, would you like to see an IndyCar race return to Phoenix?
Well, yes, I would love to see an IndyCar race back here, and I think they'd put on a great show. Nowadays, one thing about the IndyCars, it's a lot of stuff you can't do like you used to do, so they're pretty matched, pretty even. You got a bunch of young drivers out there, and you got a couple engine manufacturers got good motors. You don't see them blow up like they used to, so I think it'd be a good race, but that's up to the promoters.
All right. Mr. Foyt, thank you again for taking the time to come up here with us, and thank you for being here this week.
Well, thanks for inviting me out here, and I'm just glad you did. Got a little vacation. God bless all y'all.